on barbecue that he's going to invite me over to eat with. So this afternoon, we are going to engage in two activities. I'm really excited to introduce you all who may not know her to Lee Elkins, who is with the Carl Vinson Institute of Government. Lee will be our lead facilitator during our strategic planning this summer, from now to this summer as we move into developing our strategic plan. As many of you all know, our last 2-year strategic plan is set to expire at the end of this academic year. And so we want to ensure that the work we're doing is aligned to a strategic plan, have a vision of where we're going to hope to go in the next year or two. So this morning was all about charter system governance to really help set the foundation and kind of get ourselves into that frame of mind around innovation and flexibility. And Lee will walk us through 2 activities today that help us really look back to where we've come from and then really start to envision where we've gone. So without further ado, I will pass the torch over to you, Ms. Lee, to introduce yourself and to lead us in this facilitation.
Awesome. Thank you, Lawrence. I appreciate it. I'm glad to be with y'all today, even in a Zoom box. Welcome to my guest room. And if you hear odd noises in my home, we have 2 cats, a 10-week-old puppy, and a 35-year-old parrot. And so in addition to those interesting noises you might hear, I'm a proud CCSD parent of an 8-year-old who goes to Chase Street. I'm also co-chair of the LSGT there. And so sometimes I feel like I work part-time for the Vinson Institute and spend a little more time with the LSGT than maybe we originally thought we would spend with the LSGT. Nonetheless, I'm excited to be with y'all. I'm excited to help you in this endeavor to update the strategic plan. I don't at all see it as a wholesale rewrite. I think that what we need to look at, what are those priorities, what needs to stay, what's maybe not as important, and move forward from there. And so the first activity I want to do with you today is one of the things I think is really important in strategic planning is that you can't just sit down and write a plan. You can't just say, okay, we're going to make a strategic plan. Let's just write some things down. I think it requires reflection. I think it requires aspiration. I think it requires input from stakeholders, and then also understanding the purpose of each part of the plan. And so it also requires that you be intentional and that you be honest. And so we're going to start this first exercise today where we're going to reflect back on where we've been. I think it's really one of the best things to do organizationally is to think about where you've been, where you've come from. And so what we're going to do is we're going to start, and I will say this, so Fenwick, I think, is driving the technology. We're going to be using Padlets, and we may have a quick explanation of how that works for everybody as we get there. But what I want you to do is spend a little time individually thinking about what has and has not been effective over the past 4 years. So we're really thinking about 2017, 2018, 2019, and right now in 2020. I want you to think about highs and lows. There are a lot of things that have been effective. And so we're going to spend the next 10 or 15 minutes. The way Padlets is set up is you'll be posting under the years. And if we could pull that up, and I don't know if maybe I just can't see it or if it's not up yet. Lawrence, do you know, or Fenwick? I don't know. There it is. Okay. So what I'd like for you to do is think about through the last several years, the last 4 years, and separately on Post-its, write those highs and lows. And because we're going to be filing them under years, make sure you say if it's a high or a low, because to some people, something that's a low might be a high to someone else, but we want to try and capture them as best we can across the years. If you've had some time to work individually, we'll come together as a group and talk about some of those and get some clarification. So does that make sense to everybody? Are there any questions? And if there are, if you want to put them in the chat, that would be very helpful. Sometimes it's hard when you don't have everybody on the screen to know if somebody has a question.
Lee, I'm happy to tell everybody how to use the Padlet. If you don't know how to use a Padlet, what you'll see, there's a plus sign on your screen. If you hit the plus sign, it will open a virtual sticky note, and that sticky note will allow you to type your information into it. So you will see is if you go under 2019, that's a column, you hit the plus sign and it says a title. That's where you would write high or low. And then under it says write something. So you just write whatever you're thinking. And then whenever you're ready to do another sticky note, you just hit plus again. So you could just add as many sticky notes as you like. And you just want to populate it under that year in which that action took place.
Lawrence, do they need to go click on a link to it to open it for themselves?
Yes, good question. That is coming in your chat right now. Thank you. Okay. All right, the link to the Padlet is in the chat room.
And if you can't remember the exact year of something, that's okay. Just kind of stick it in the where you think's most relevant.
I do want to also make sure everyone knows, so it is an anonymous Padlet right now, so your names are not going to be on it. So as we reference it later, if you're saying that's the one I put, just know we don't know which one you put because it is an anonymous Padlet. So whatever you type is just what you type, and we can reference it. We'll just have to reference by what it says, not by the person. So.
Lawrence, it seems like one person can type at a time on a certain year. Am I just not doing it right?
No. One second, Mr. Davis. Let me check technology.
Yeah, how do we have to like hit enter to get them to show up? Or no, they're showing up. Oops.
One moment, folks. Sorry. We tested this out and it's apparently.
These are the challenges we're all trying to figure out on how to do meetings and post things for public input with the tools that are available. Feel free while we're trying to get the technology right to just jot them down, jot down your thoughts and ideas, and then we can add them as we go along.
Hey, Lee, unfortunately, it doesn't look like it's allowing me to do it all at the same time. I'm not sure what is happening with this, so I apologize.
Okay, then we're going to switch it up on the fly because what we can do is this. Let's spend a couple of minutes and each of you just individually either make some notes by hand or type in on a document what you would consider highs and lows over the past several years. And we'll come back together, and as we kind of debrief on it, Lawrence, maybe you or Fenwick could add them in as we go along, and we can look there to see what kind of themes we might see. Are some of you able to type it in to the Padlet? I see a couple of nods. Okay, great. Let's do a couple more minutes. I see some folks look like they're still writing. I don't want to rush anybody. We close? Folks feel like they've had a chance to put things in there? I'm seeing a couple thumbs up. Good. Okay.
No, I haven't done it at all. I haven't been able to, but I've written some down.
Okay. Do you want to see if you can jump in there now?
I can't even see the bottom of the page.
You have to go,
Do what now?
you have to do it through the link. Did you do the link?
So the link came through in the chat room. You click go to the
Oh,
live version.
okay.
Yeah.
No, I did not know that.
Sorry.
Also, if what I had to do on my screen was I couldn't see the bottom. I was live, but I couldn't go down, and so what I had to do was shrink it.
Yep.
So you'll need to non-zoom it. Go to 50% or something.
And then after you type, if you hit the plus, like you're going to do another one, it'll enter your first one, seems like.
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah, I hate to be trouble, but when I click on that link, I just get a blue screen. It's beautiful, but that's all I get.
Okay. Okay. Do you want to either email yours to Lawrence or?
Sure.
Okay, that'd be great.
I'd be glad to. Or through chat, yeah.
Either way. let's start walking through some of these if y'all want to. And continue to add as you go along. And what I want you to think about as we go through is to just look for think about themes that we may see across the years. So in 2017, the plan was built with diverse community input and started with aspirations of.
Oh, we just lost you.
Am I there? We were emerging as a charter district and career academy was being defined. Balanced governance concepts were introduced to CCSD. The superintendent search was formed and a high match was found. Began equity work. Equity issues brought to attention of a larger audience. The new superintendent arrived to multiple personnel issues literally on day one. The Code of Student Conduct was revised with focus on restorative practices, equity, and supportive discipline practices. Feedback was gathered from 12 focus groups. LSGT training underway and the team's functioning. Was the Cedar Shoals event. Was the beginning of an era of community distrust. And a low, the LSGT training, and then the board lack of training. What's missing from 2017, or what are some of the themes that you see from 2017?
Well,
Go ahead, Greg.
Well, I mean, I saw a lot of enthusiasm. That's the year we hired a new superintendent. And so it was a very enthusiastic time period. And so I think it was, I remember it being very upbeat. And one of the first things we did was the new superintendent addressed the Cedar Shoals incident that was still hanging over us.
Okay.
What I see missing are any student achievement results and reports. And of course, that was the underlying focus of our building the strategic plan and to get to that equity and the huge gaps that we had, or the low performance that we had. And I don't think we had yet, it had not yet been revealed to us just how far away we were from where we wanted to be.
And so you would say that student achievement was a low point? The district was at a low point?
It was definitely a low point for some students, yes.
Okay.
But we didn't necessarily know as
Okay.
much as we learned later.
Right.
I want to sort of piggyback on what Greg said with 2017 as a high, because that was the first year of having a new superintendent, and the annual convocation that we had that was held at the Classic Center. Oh, it was high. It was an upbeat. It gave the district a shot in the right arm. And we were on our way. And all of a sudden, somehow, it's just like a big air balloon, but somehow that balloon got pricked. Some of the air was let out of it. But anyway, that was a tremendous beginning for us. Been affiliated with the school district 45 years, and I had never seen an annual convocation at that magnitude.
Tell me some of the other, when y'all think back to 2017, some of the other kind of feelings around the district.
Let me think.
And there was a lot of excitement to have a new superintendent.
I think there was still an awful lot of angst about the era that we were coming out of. I think the Cedar Shoals incident and the loss of a very popular, to some people, superintendent who pretty much, I can't describe him as anything more than very charismatic, but always seemed to have his pulse on the entire community. So there were some pretty heavy shoes to fill. when Dr. Means came on board. But by the same token, that same person had fallen from grace. And so it wasn't that hard in that regard. I think that for me in 2017, it was a year of just trying to figure out who we were in terms of, especially administratively. If I remember correctly, this is probably the culmination of our attempts to not conform to TEKS and leaks and not conform to something, but pretty much we had an initiative underway for everything that the state was pushing down the pike. We were definitely saying, no, we can do it better. We got a better way to do that. And so there were people from the community, people from the university engaged in helping us wage that war to bring even how we evaluate teachers into a part of our charter system. So our charter system was evolving. So again, there were a lot of new things happening, and they were very rationally driven, obviously based on something that we were trying to change and implement in our strategic plan. But it was constant change for us, and no real systems in place, no real measurements in place, no real demands for accountability.
Okay.
I can think of two things from 2017. That was my first year on the board. So we had, in that calendar year, 3 superintendents. Dr. Lanou left at the very first meeting in 2017, which I don't think all the board members actually knew that was going to happen at that point. Then we had Jack Parrish as our interim. My impression of Jack was that he did steady the ship, and I enjoyed working with him personally. He made sure that the 2 new board members, that would be Jared Bybee and myself, both got a good onboarding or a better onboarding as new board members than had been done in the months leading up to our joining the board. So I appreciated that. Jack also made some hard decisions that I think the board encouraged him to do. So that was positive. I think a low point was later that year. The policy committee brought forth a policy that was out of our board self-governance training that Jack had started us with. And the policy committee brought forward a policy to impose term limits on the officers of the board effective with the next election, which was going to be just the next January. And that was a flashpoint of distrust in both on the board and in the community, because it was perceived that the implementation of those term limits was directed at the then current officers. And so that was whatever side you were on in that one, that was a misstep. And I talked to some of you on here will know Brad Drager. When Brad, who was our search firm consultant, when he came back to work with us, I said to him, that was just stupid of the board. We should never have been in that place, because it shouldn't have been perceived that it was directed at that person, or if it was directed at that person, then it shouldn't have been done. Either way, what they call in tennis an unforced error. And I would link that to the comment that someone made about this being the beginning of distrust. And I think it's true both on the board and in the community, because that was when we had people from the community come to board meetings in force and number and accuse us as a board of being I won't go into all that, but being discriminatory and trying to use board actions to be discriminatory. So that was a low point for me in 2017. And I think that from where I was sitting, that was the beginning of bigger trouble.
Okay. So there were some real things that were great and people were very enthusiastic about, but then there were also some things that started some seeds of distrust, maybe some discord between the community and the system, maybe in some ways, that have maybe some have stayed, some have not. Anything else about 2017? I think that's pretty good to get. Yes, ma'am. Did I see?
Yes, so
Yeah,
I think I was in a school.
Go
leader-
ahead.
go ahead, Dr. Thomas.
Okay, I'm sorry, Mr. Worthy. I was in a school leadership position, and that year was definitely one for school leaders of just culminating a lot of uncertainty. We had started about, let's see, 8, 9 years prior to that, and had really gotten some strong momentum towards student achievement, focusing on curriculum, assessment, instruction. We were very purposeful about our work, and we were accountable, not just talking about state and federal accountability, but there was this district level accountability and direction and support. And then probably after about 5 or 6 years, that started to wane. There was a change in leadership. There was the Cedar incident. And honestly, I think sometimes you can get so successful that you lose sight on what got you to a place of success. And that's just my personal, I guess, and professional opinion, is that in terms of leadership and direction, we had hit a success place, and then the focus turned to the success, and attention was lost on how we got to where we were. And so then we stopped having that direction and support. And as a result, we started to decline in our student achievement. And then that was coupled by the other things that were happening in the community at that time.
I love the way you phrase that you can lose sight of what made you successful. And I think that's important. I wrote that down. Mr. Worthy, you were going to add something.
Yes, I want to go back to 2017 because we talked about bringing in a new superintendent, which was Dr. Means. And that particular year, obviously, was going to be a transition year, but what hit him really tough, West Broad.
Okay.
And the West Broad situation brought out a lot of community outcry. And I do believe that it caused a division with the superintendent and the board. And it actually spilled over into 2018 and also 2019.
Okay.
Hey, Lee,
Yes, sir.
Jackson Fisher. I'd like to add one thing. In 2017, I guess I got unique experience of being, I was chairing the Career Academy at the time as a community person, because now I'm working for the district. And one thing that really struck me before Dr. Means even got here, we had a community member to do an opinion letter that he really didn't fit in this community. He go back and look in Athens Valley Herald, community member wrote, I guess, opinion that he didn't fit in this community. And to me, that sort of started, although he hadn't got started yet, sort of started some of the issues that we had to deal with. And being an African-American male, it really was a slap in the face because he hadn't got here yet. And people were judging him. He hadn't even got settled in. So to me, that started the division, in my opinion, in this community.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Okay, since we're talking about division, I'm going to also
I'm gonna
look
reel you
at
back
two-
in a second, but I'm gonna let you add this, and then we're gonna march on. We'll get you. Go ahead.
Are you speaking to me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, in 2018, when that was Dr. Means' second year, actually the part of the first year here. But anyway, he had done an analysis of all of the test scores, et cetera. And of course, that's when he implemented equity full force. And I can remember his exact words in terms of the test scores. And he was talking about race, Black and brown children versus white students. And he said it at a board meeting that when he looked at the test scores that he wanted to cry. That's what he said. And then, of course, he started moving forward with Avid, and the beat went on. And then, of course, it brought on further division there. Some people probably don't want to admit that, and I'm not talking directly about the board. I'm talking about the community as a whole. But he did that and started moving forward with it. And then, of course, in 2019, we are beginning to see a difference in terms of the test scores. So I wanted to add that.
That's good. That's good. Let's walk on the rest of the way through what folks have added for 2018. Since Mr. Worthy, you started us there. A low was over a year of work on board self-governance policies was in part wasted. A high was a focus on equity. Community conversations were disjointed, and there is a strong disconnect in our move toward change to bring about equity. Increasing polarization of the board began in 2018. A high was seen as the strategic plan reporting as systems in place had measurements. A low was principal turnover. What else should we add in 2018, highs or lows?
Okay.
We talked a little bit, Mr. Worthy talked a little bit about test scores and really looking and seeing the inequity in test scores. Principal turnover was mentioned. What are some of the other good and bad highs?
Well, what I saw at the time, and well, not at the time, no, definitely not at the time. But, you know, when we uncovered, as Charles just pointed out, the inequity in terms of test scores, as well as discipline data. To me, we had a juncture of whether or not we're going to come together as a community and begin to figure out how we were going to address this, or if we were going to begin to depend on outside companies, outside consultants, you know, in other words, basically to get advice from outside the district or training outside the district that would solve this problem. And so I see that as a low. I didn't see that as a low at the time.
Okay.
You know, because I guess being an academic, I always kind of think, well, you know, if you're stuck, then just hire somebody to tell you how to figure it out. And so at the time, I didn't have a problem with it.
Mm-hmm.
Looking back on it, I think 2018 was the year that we began to rely more and more on consultants and that type of thing.
Okay, good. Okay. What else?
I'll count the outside consultants as a high, and primarily from my experience, it's kind of hard to get neutrality, and you're trying to get an unbiased person to come in and help direct you or help lead you. They don't ever bring a solution. They help you find the solution yourself. And so the object there was to not have local people who are influenced by the community itself to try and drive that direction. So I think that's a plus. The other part that happened in 2018 is, I'm trying to make sure that I'm not mixing 18 and 19 up.
It's okay.
But again, when you bring out the numbers, and I still have this piece of paper that I picked up at a community meeting where it showed one of our elementary schools, third grade children, with 7% of the Black children at that school reading on grade level. I cannot tell you how that was impactful on my efforts and my energy around helping us gain equity. It is tragic, it is sad, it is it goes back a very long, long way in education. And so that was one of the years that people in the community that talked with me felt entirely wounded by a system that we had in place that allowed that to continue, that explained that away by a 1% or a 0.5% gain. And we're willing to accept that as a norm for our children. And so that was a pivotal year where I think a lot of people started to wake up in the community, and they're still awake, and they're very vocal now, and they're not willing to go back. And so this won't go away until we bring a solution that allows a change to occur that changes that trajectory for these children and for all of our children.
Good.
Because it's not just a disservice to them, it's a disservice to all of our children.
Good.
And that same group has a high distrust for people from the community because they consider them as protecting the status quo and ensuring that the underserved remain underserved. And it almost comes down to what someone said to me is, can this community function without high poverty? And so those are the conversations that I hear.
Okay. That's good. That's powerful insight, truly. Other things from 2018?
I think you said 2018.
Mm-hmm.
I
And
can't.
it's okay if we're a little off.
Okay, I can't remember if this was 2018, but I do remember when the data for children in Clarke County was particularly Black children in Clarke County. Those disparities were looked at a little bit closer, and by closer, I mean outside of the district. So before that time, a few years before then, I had worked in the district and like knew that those disparities existed, but there was a lot of excitement for me, honestly, with that information being like in the public. Okay, whoa, we're moving. This is one of the recommendations that you'll see in literature is that when you're talking about discipline disparities and things like that, you first have to look at it and understand, you know, how bad or how good or what the disparities are. And so that was a high point for me because I thought, you know, it brought a level of awareness outside of the school district to the community that, you know, that confirmed, you know, some of the worries and some of the challenges that the district and students and
Good. Thank you. Any other thoughts on 2018?
Yeah, I want to point out that that was also the year that we passed the equity. Two things that we passed. One was a resolution that said that we were committed to educating all of our children, even the undocumented. And that was in the middle of a controversy with the sheriff and the actions of the sheriff. And so we passed that 9-0, that resolution. We also passed an equity policy, which had been developed through a kind of a grouping of there were a couple of board members there, staff who dealt with the immigrant community and people from UGA. And anyway, it was a group that the superintendent pulled together, and we developed a equity policy. And I saw that as a big step forward. But you know, thinking back on it, it just kind of like a lot of policies, once it was passed and that was done. And so there was not an attempt to continue. There was some effort and some talk about continuing to meet on the subject of equity. And this is not a school board thing. This wasn't a community thing. It was kind of a joint ad hoc committee, you know, to continue the discussion around equity. And that was not seen as necessary. And so after a couple of meetings, it was never pulled back together. But I do think the equity policy that we passed was a high.
Good. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to pull up 2019.
Can
Yes,
I
sir.
just one more thing? Because I think it's relevant. In 2018 was when Mr. Vernon Payne became ill. And he was the representative, long-time representative from District 2. And that became and is still a problem for the board, because we started operating kind of more often than not as a team of 8 board members instead of a full complement of 9. And so we've had some instability and problems filling that seat, both procedurally and otherwise, kind of ever since. And so I think several of us would agree that that's been a problem in terms of representation of that district, and has also led to some distrust, probably a lot of distrust on the part of some people in that district. So that was the beginning of kind of an unstable period for that particular seat on the board.
Okay, thank you for that.
And if I may add one more thing, because I think I'm okay.
Yes, ma'am.
This was the election year for filling that seat, was it not, or was that 19? This board, the new board was seated in 19, is that right? So that was an election year as well for several seats on the board. And again, I think there was a polarization in the community. There was definitely distrust in the community. And so it was really a chaotic time, period. So the things that got passed, that was just a miracle. I think that we were able to come together and get anything really successfully done. But the differences in terms of how the board operated were very evident. And there was a big push for, again, bringing in more community involvement in board decisions and board actions. So we were starting to shift from more of an autocratic style of leadership to a more participatory style of leadership. And we did not do that well. And we did not do that necessarily with, I don't know the right word, so I'm not going to say it. I think we could have done better at actually implementing that process of having more input. It didn't have to be as chaotic as it was. Good. So It was a difficult year. It created tension in the board. It created a very difficult space for the new superintendent to operate in, because now he had to manage his team of however many, 8, 9, 10, but he also had different factions in the community that he had to navigate. So it was a really difficult, 2018 was a difficult year. And as we moved into 2019, we carried a lot of that with us as the new board was seated. The board itself had difficulty doing basic things like looking at the strategic plan for review and incorporating that into the superintendent's evaluation and executing on that. We had difficulty in 2018 and we had difficulty in 2019. And I can honestly say that here in 2020, it is May, the end of May, and we've missed one of our policy deadlines already. So yeah, it was a challenging year.
Okay. So one challenge has kind of led to another challenge, and it's all kind of just snowballed, so to speak.
Right.
In several ways.
It was a convergence of things, trying to do balanced governance, trying to do policy changes, trying to, again, get the participatory community participation more engaged in board activities, I guess, or in running the district, trying to get the LSGTs up and going, trying to make our charter system go. It was just this whole morass of change. And there wasn't a very strong conductor for the community.
Good. Okay. Let's look at 2019.
Thank you.
Yes, I'll speak on 2019 to begin with, and I was trying to find a better word, and I think I have found a substitute word from what I was initially going to say. 2019 was an explosive year.
Okay.
That was the year we had tremendous division with the board and the superintendent, and also the board itself. And it also led to putting the superintendent on a administrative leave with pay. Then it led to a anonymous stakeholder filing a complaint. At that time, it was Advanced Ed. Of course, it's Cognia now. So that's why I said an explosive year. Things exploded.
Big explosions, not just little ones.
Big ones.
There
Let me
were some
ask-
A lot,
significant.
well, really stepped in a mind of dynamite there, okay?
Miss Davis, what were you going to say?
Are we live?
Yes.
Sure we are.
Okay, I just want to make sure I need to remind myself to be careful. All right.
Let me walk through the comments that folks got that put into Padlet. Mission statement. The mission statement at times was not clear. The budget tried to remove funding for LSGTs. Group student achievement results were another low. A high was that LSGT funds were given back. About 50% of schools had increase on their CCRPI. The Hillsman Health Center opened. The district graduation rate increased. A low was the attacks on the change products and resistance to change, but some voices were quieter and more reflective. A low was the conflict between the board and superintendent. A low was district leadership was halted. A high was Dr. Thomas steps into the breach and moves us forward. A low was change in district leadership and loss of focus. A high was student test scores increased. A high was transparency and beginning to emerge as a way to accountability. A low was high turnover of principals. A low was a lack of retention of experienced teachers. A high was a focus on looking at data and creating tools for easier access to information. Low, again, was the superintendent board relationships. A low was an application of data and possible over-reliance on objective data points to, and that sentence didn't get finished. So there's a mixed bag there. What else does that make you think of?
Well, I mean, one thing is that we started out the year with new board members, and and maybe I'm, saying this in a presidential fashion, but I think the quality of questioning became higher. I think there was, I felt like there was a lot more discussion on issues of test scores and equity and trying to unpack the data and that type of thing. And I'm not making a reflection of former board members, but I think it's just, it was just a different style of a board. Where earlier, I had been pulled aside and told that I asked too many questions by a member of the previous board. And because it was the idea is you did not want long meetings, which I'm back to long meetings too. But anyway, as I do think that we got some good quality board members that started in 2000.
Good. Who else?
I'll say a low is that the board, as in 2019 and 2020, is really slow to embrace training and embrace really understanding and following our roles. We are a different dynamic now because we have some more seasoned members, including myself, right, who really, I really like a little bit of structure here, and a lot of structure actually. And then we have people who are willing to try things, and I think that's fine, but there has to be a respect established and a way to actually do that cohesively.
Okay, good.
And the ownership of our actions. We don't have a board that takes responsibility for their actions.
Okay.
I can think of a couple of things from 2019.
Yes, sir.
Piggybacking on Tish's chat comment, I think you can tell that there has been a lack of focus on the strategic plan. I'll definitely agree with Linda on that. Actually, once I suggested a work session, why don't we start our meetings? Why don't we have the strategic plan up on screen in front of everybody? But none of that really happens. And so you're hearing a lot of things that don't necessarily directly connect to it. The other thing is 2019 had a considerable amount of board turnover. It wasn't just that we had new people come, but we also had, in 2019, we had a change, multiple changes in the District 2 seat. So it went from being someone who was ill to then that resignation, then a kind of a suboptimal process for filling that, and then the person that filled it resigned in the same calendar year. And so we had that, and also we had our board president move to California in that year as well, if I'm remembering correctly. So that also just kind of added to the churn.
Okay. Anybody else on 2019? Kara.
I had the comment, I guess, that didn't get finished was mine. I had put as a high that there was more data available and a focus on data and trying to make informed decisions. But then as a low, I put that the over reliance on looking at this kind of data can take away from, I think I said something about focusing more on the children's achievement as a whole, or the children as a whole, and kind of being reduced to whether you were proficient or not proficient. So while I think the data is really important and we need to look at it, I think we need to also understand how to use it and when it's appropriate to use it and when it's not appropriate to use it. So I just wanted to
Good. Thank you.
fill in the rest of that comment.
Great. Anything else?
Yes, kind of piggybacking again off of the comment about a lack of focus kind of on strategic plan. We were very busy, probably both in 2018, but especially in 2019, in discussing various property moves. And it wasn't just West Broad, but there were other things, including district office and some other things that really consumed a lot of board time. And I think you could connect some of those things to the strategic plan, but not easily connected to student achievement. So I felt like we've spent, in my time on the board, I think we've spent a remarkable amount of time on property issues. And that's been the feedback I've gotten from school board, former school board presidents in other states, both this state and other states, who have said, wow, y'all spend a lot of time on property.
Okay. Anything else for 2019?
I think, again, 2019 was a year of trying to put systems in place. And so if we look at the things that we have spent a lot of time on, it's because we don't have incident day by day, new idea by new idea, new thought by new thought from wherever it came from. And so to me, we were on our way to building systems for managing the strategic plan. We somehow got distracted from that, but I don't remember a single thing being brought to this board by Dr. Means that did not have as a part of that recommendation what initiative it touched in the strategic plan, where it came from, and how it was funded. And that was a request that we made very early on in his tenure in terms of getting more transparency. And so those things are missing now. And as long as I had those things in front of me as we were trying to prepare and be ready for the board, at least I knew what I was focused on. And again, we're sidetracked because we don't have systems in place that we as a board have agreed to handle these particular issues. And I think the one thing that was very glaring was like you said, we struggled to even know if we could remove or how do we treat a board seat that was vacant because of illness for a year, and there is no process, right? And so we discovered a lot about what we do and do not have as we go along. And so again, I feel like we take 2 steps forward and 4 steps back. So hopefully we'll be able to move forward with this strategic plan put together by this board that we can all walk away from knowing what our priorities are.
Absolutely. I hope so too. Yes, sir.
And I just wanted to add that it's not always our fault. It sometimes seems that way, and sometimes it totally is. But in a particular case, such as what do you do with a vacant board seat, what we learned was that it's not just that we don't have a process, it's actually that the state doesn't have a process. That's what we learned from our legal counsel. And so there's a perception of the board from the outside, from the community, there's a perception that this board can do things that it actually can't. And so it puts us in a frustrating situation.
Okay, let's look at 2020 really quickly. And
okay, yeah, I just want to say something about 2019 is when I became aware of how much money was being spent with outside contractors, and that, at least in my impression, the board had not been informed of.
Okay, great. Okay, 2020. Hi.
2020. Oh, go ahead, please.
Okay, let me just run through these real quick. Okay, extraordinary and successful efforts to feed kids in the district despite COVID. High school seniors graduated during a pandemic. A low was the charter school district nuts and bolts not really discussed until 4 years into our existence as a charter district, but at least we're doing it now. A high was the Career Academy pass certification. A low was that COVID-19 caused a premature end to face-to-face teaching for the school year. High was strong community engagement during the pandemic. High was the interim superintendent. What else do we want to add to this year?
I'm surprised. Well, anyway, a low. Cognitive report received in
Lee, I
April.
think there's a few.
And the accreditation.
There's a few more on the list that Lee stopped reading. I think
Oh, I didn't see them. I'm sorry. It didn't scroll. Okay, hold on.
Okay.
There it goes. A high, Cedar makes it to the basketball finals championship game. A low was that Cognia places district as accredited under review. Are there any more? That's as far as mine's going. Sometimes it may be a matter of updating. If I've missed any, just let me know and we can, and I'm capturing as much as I can in notes. Mr. Worthy, you were saying.
You read exactly what I was going to say with the low in terms of the cognitive report.
Okay. What else?
So I would add that the cognitive report is an opportunity for us to get our policies and norms in order. So it's actually a good thing without, it's a suggestion. It's something we need to think about and work on without the severe penalty that they could have applied to us. We have an opportunity to do things right.
But that we have oh, okay. I'm gonna challenge that because, and maybe we shouldn't do that, but we could have avoided that entirely. And so again, to have a finding is the thing that you don't go for. You don't look for those findings to be the things to tell you what to work on. When we have a strategic plan, we had some plans to implement training. We had plans to do this strategic, what was it? All board training. We've been trying to execute these for 2 years now. And so from where I'm sitting as a more experienced board member here, I don't see that as an opportunity. I see that as a failure on our part to follow through on the things that we needed to not even be in this place. I'm still excited that we're going to have it, but I don't think we should look at it as an opportunity. It's a failure on our part. The goal is to not have findings.
And yet it was Dr. Means who sent the complaint and got the process rolling because of our inability to do what we needed to do.
Right. And so are we saying that it's going to take an outside thing for us to build a strategic plan and be able to follow it? Or again, I'm saying that we have an opportunity to put a plan together to do the things that we should do and that we've been trying to do for a long time. And I'd like for us to just prioritize those things and let's get those done.
And so what I'm going to say here is that somebody's opportunities be somebody else's threats or pressures to how things are. And so you can see the same thing in two different ways. And you can see the cognia as something that could have been avoided or as something that is a kickstart to move things forward. And I would say in terms of this process, it's there. It's where we are as a district. And so we have to take it for what it is and move forward in the steps that we have to do. And part of looking back helps you see what were those opportunities we missed? What were those things that are creating pressure in our district? What have been our weaknesses? And the highs and lows have really kind of, if you think about the conversation we've had for about the last hour, those lows, some of them have been because of weaknesses in the district as a whole. Some of them have been about opportunities that you've taken advantage of. And so what we have to do as a district is thinking about how we use a plan to address those things, and whether they are strengths that you know you can do this and this is how you do it, or they're weaknesses that you have to figure out how to overcome. That's what we want this plan to do. Do you see over the last few years any opportunities that you've missed? Are there things that you could have done that you feel like you just missed?
I think that
I'm going to go, Dr. Yeager, I saw your hand first, and then I'll come to Ms. Davis and Dr. Knox and Mr. Worthy and Mr. Davis. So we'll go that way. Go ahead.
So my history is on the local school governance teams. I don't think the connections that we just spent the morning talking about this, how the connections between the local school governance team work, how that work went. Some schools better than others, clearly, but it was going, it was underway, and yet it hit the wall. It didn't make it up to the surface. This board, as far as I can tell, was not aware of all the good works that the governance teams were doing, and the budgets were cut, and things didn't happen the way they were supposed to happen within the charter district framework that we accepted in 2017. So that's a missed opportunity in my mind.
Okay, good. Who did I have next? I think Ms. Davis. She may be frozen.
She looks frozen.
Missed that last part, Tish.
I'm sorry, I said something about missed opportunities, that the local school governance teams were functioning, at least at some schools, and that there was no connection up to the board as best I can tell. Yeah.
So what was happening at the local level wasn't rising up to be recognized or really known about.
And in fact was threatened. I mean, that's the main reason I'm on the board.
Good. Okay. Other missed opportunities.
I would say, I know this is not as tangible, and I've only been here a short amount of time, so I'm just really talking about 2018 and 19. But I feel that we have missed an opportunity to self-reflect.
We say that one more time.
I feel, can you hear me?
Yes.
I feel we've missed opportunities to self-reflect. I still think, like even with there have been some great things happening, And then there have been some not so great things happening. But I think with every single one of those is an opportunity for me as a board member to see what did I miss? What did I do wrong? Because there are many things I've done wrong. And what do I need to continue doing? What are those things I'm doing right? What things do I need to change about my approach? What things do I need to change about how I conceptualize things and how I support the superintendent or the interim superintendent, how I support other board members? And I don't know that we've fully done that work yet. It's a process, but I don't know, like collectively and as a governing team and then as individually, that we've taken those opportunities.
Okay, good. Other missed opportunities. Yes, Dr. Knox.
Sorry about that. I did want to throw one quick thing out about 2020 that I forgot to put.
Sure.
Really recent, but I think that the most recent budget process, we're not through with it yet, but the approval of the tentative budget, I thought that was a real high point. I thought that the board and the superintendent worked well together on that, and came to mutual resolutions on things in a very amicable way, a very professional way.
Good.
In terms of opportunities missed, I will echo what Tish said about it more generally. This board, not even we, it predates me. This board probably should have been working on what a charter school district is, what the controls are, what you can do with it, probably the day after the document was signed in 2016, I believe. And that just didn't happen. We instead had a superintendent that ended up leaving about 7 months after, somewhere in there. And then we had an interim, and then we had a new superintendent, and so the whole charter thing got on the board side, I think it got kind of shelved in a way. James Barlamont on the district side with the LSGTs, I've heard uniformly great comments about the training that was done. In fact, I remember Elvita Thornton on this board saying, I wish we were getting that training. And in retrospect, that was a very prescient comment, because I think the board needed that training at the same time. And it does sound like you do bring together, other districts bring together LSGTs and boards. So that's kind of amplifying on what Tish said, that it's that was a big missed opportunity, and that's multiple, that's different boards and multiple superintendents and all that. So that's one. I think I mentioned one at beginning in 2017. There was a missed opportunity for well, actually, I mentioned it in 2018 as well. When we were doing board self-governance revisions, the so-called B policies, there was a missed opportunity by the board to agree on those, and for disagreements to be aired, but for the entire board to move forward with them. And instead, there was a lot of there was kind of a push-pull where some things would come forward and then they would go back for revision, and then everything was held and then came forward for it. And then in the end, some things were just jumped. And now we're starting to explore if we can incorporate some of those ideas back into norms, not as policy, but as guidance for what to do. And so that's been a multi-year process that has not given fruit yet. So that feels like a missed opportunity. There should have been a way to do that that didn't take 4 years.
Okay. Ms. Davis, you had something.
Yes, thank you. I wanted to say that I've been here since 2012, and honestly, maybe my level of engagement is I don't know where it is, but I am not experiencing this board as it's being described. I have been as engaged as I can, I guess, in terms of policies, in terms of the LSGT, even talking about the LSGTs. This board was very instrumental in insisting that training be done uniformly to all LSGTs. We insisted that the LSGTs be trained not by a trainer, but by the Institute. And so therefore that training was very well put together and has become the model and been used in other districts. So this board at a governance level was engaged in forming these LSGTs. We didn't have a single thing to say about who was on them. That was a recommendation that was brought to us, and it was left up to the schools to handle that. I have heard things, even the taking of the funds, when the presentation was made to us about taking the funds from the LSGTs, the statement was the principals gave the funds back to the district. And so how that becomes the board's responsibility, I really don't know. But so again, I think this conversation between the boards and the LSGTs has been a thing that's been on the to-do list for as long as we have had LSGTs, in terms of how do we communicate with them? What are the waivers? This has been going on ever since we started that. Same thing with the Career Academy. You know, what is the role of the board versus the Career Academy? Those questions have been out there. They've been on somebody's list of things to do. And under one superintendent, when we had things like that, that would be a presentation to the board at a work session. We would know ahead of time, so we could get questions to that person, and we would hear that information and act on that information. So I'm not sure where we got to this place that the board doesn't seem to know about what's going on. We don't know everything that's happening at every school. So I was very pleased this morning to hear about the LSGT minutes going up on the websites at some places. So there are ways to couple that. I am concerned that if we don't even have a baseline of understanding of what's happening and what our role is and what's happening, how do we go forward with building norms? How do we go forward with coming up with these things? And so if we're not honest about, and I'm not saying honest in terms of not telling the truth, I'm saying if we can honestly look at what it is we have to do and what duty we have to charge, and then kind of overlay that on what we know and don't know, what we have access to and don't have access to, then I think we have a path forward. And I am just a firm believer that the North Star is the strategic plan. And if we don't have it in our strategic plan to do it, then it's not going to happen. And if somebody's not in charge of that thing in our strategic plan, it's not going to happen. If we don't have a will to do it, it's not going to happen. And so I would like to see us look at that strategic plan as our North Star, and then look at those measurements and sit down with the superintendent and understand what the superintendent is trying to do so that we will know how to support the superintendent. And if we're supporting the superintendent, our only employee, then I think we will more than likely be supporting the schools and the LSGTs and what's happening in the district. Good. But I don't think we can spread our wings across the entire district and manage that. That's just not our role.
Right. Okay, I'm going to take one more comment here on opportunities maybe missed, and we're going to pivot to become aspirational. And Dr. Dykeman, did I see you with your?
Well, I think you said I was going to be next.
Then let's go right ahead, Mr. Worthy.
But anyway, missed opportunities. I think that it's unfortunate for this board to have missed opportunities for some of the best board training that we have ever had. We had Dr. Thomas Osbury here, Balanced Governance, and we've had several other just tremendous training. And seemingly this board has not benefited from that. And I think that's just unfortunate. And also, John sort of touched on this a few minutes ago when he said, stakeholders or constituents, you know, they feel that we have power that we don't have. But there again, following our role, you have to follow your role and responsibilities. And that has not happened with this board.
Okay. All right, Mr. Davis, and then we're going to close this out and pivot to something else. And if anybody has any additional comments, you can put them in the chat.
All right.
Yeah, I want to put this out there because I know at some point we're going to be involved in another superintendent search. I think we had a missed opportunity when, and I've never been in human resources. I don't have a business background. I don't know how the proper way of doing things, but we had a very scripted interview process for a superintendent. And I don't think that was fair to the people we interviewed. I don't think it was fair to the person that we hired. It was just a very scripted thing, and kind of response to what Linda was saying. I don't remember any question about, talking to the people that we interviewed about LSGTs, about the fact that we were a charter system, because
Yes, we did.
because we hired essentially a headhunter who looks at things from a national perspective. And so, I think we missed an opportunity in terms of having a good dialogue with with a new superintendent, and including LSGTs, and including vision of how that person saw working with the board and that type of thing. So I think that's an opportunity.
Okay, great. Okay, so this has been, we're running a little behind, but that's okay because we're going to make up some time. We're going to look aspirationally now. And one thing I want to point out in the chat is that somebody said that maybe the folks on the cabinet could maybe add some comments in to make sure we're hearing from you, since you are, day to day in the trenches, so to speak. So make sure that you fill in comments. And if you prefer, you can send those privately to me to just inform this process if you'd rather do that. So we're going to pivot a little bit now because we've talked about the past, and it's important to reflect back and review where you've been, because if you don't understand where you've been, you cannot move forward.
You don't know where you're going.
So now we're going to be aspirational, and we're going to think about what CCSD can be. I like to imagine that you have a friend who lives here and they're deeply involved in the district. They go to every PTO meeting, they support fundraisers, they go to sporting events, they mentor, everything you'd want somebody in the community to be when it comes to the schools. But now they've moved away, and we're 5 years into the future. And they've lost touch with you, they've lost touch with the community, and they have no idea what's going on with the district. And so I want you get an email from this friend that says, tell me what's going on. I really miss the school. I really miss hearing what's going on. I know when I left, there was maybe a little discord, maybe, some things were good, some things were not. Tell me where things are. So I want you to be aspirational when you write this. This is visionary. I want you to tell them about the school activities, the students, the finances of the district, the teachers, the staff, and the board. Be specific and aspirational. And this is really about what school can be. So you've just gotten a link in the chat to a Google document where you can go in, click on that, and you can go in and type up your aspirations for the district. And I'm going to give you about 10 minutes to do this, 5 or 10 minutes. When I see that people are staring this way, I'll bring us back together, and then we're going to share some of our aspirational thoughts. We good? Thumbs up? Yes.
Do we just write this on our paper?
You can, that's fine.
Okay.
You can do the paper, but Mr. Davis, if you click the link, everybody has their own personal.
Oh, okay. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. I see that. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm a little confused. We're supposed to go to our own name?
Yep, and then that way you can have it there, and it'll be kind of a log of what you say is the aspirations for the Clarke County School District, or your vision for the Clarke County School District.
So when I click on my name, it says letter, is that right?
Yes, ma'am. It should say Linda Davis letter. Everyone should have their last name.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
That was my last confusion. I hope
I see we're getting a couple questions. Just so you all know, the letter is going to be internal, so it's not being shared out anywhere. So it's an internal letter. It's really for you just to write your own aspirations of where you like to see the Clarke County School District in the next 5 years. What are some of the things happening, students, schools, our budget, and just really dreaming about what our school district can be from your perspective. And then when you click the link for your name, it should pull up a blank Google Doc. It should literally just be a blank sheet of paper with your first and last name. And that is where you would just write your letter. So you're writing a letter to your friend, just explaining what are all the great things that are happening here based off your own perspective of where you want to be. And if you can't access it, let me know and I can share it with you directly.
And Lawrence is not letting me write. I've been trying to write in, it won't let me do anything.
All right, I'll go and now reshare it with you.
Lawrence, same problem here. In fact, I don't even see my name on it now.
I can get the letter to pop up, but my keyboard won't come up on my iPad. So
Yeah, same with
that's
me.
my problem.
It won't let me write anything in when I start typing.
All right, let's pivot again. Man. Let's talk about aspirations for the school district. And here's what I'm going to do, because I see you all in a certain order on my screen, and it's not going to be the same order that you see each other. I'm going to walk through because I want to make sure that everybody shares an aspiration for the district 5 years from now. Okay. And so this is, like I said, I'm just going to go in the order that I see you on my screen. And sometimes you move around and that's going to freak me out, but I'll do the best I can. And so, Mr. Fisher, I'm going to start with you.
Well, I know you was going to say that.
3 aspirations that you have for this district.
One would be we have a stable superintendent who's been here. 2 would be that as a board that will work with that superintendent and have the best interests of our students and our staff in mind. And thirdly, that we're a high achieving school district. You get that?
A high achieving school district.
Yes. Academically.
Good. Dr. Yeager.
So what I just wrote was that we increase our focus on early childhood education, socialization of young children, and the joy of learning at a young age, that's what we really have figured out how to instill in our kids. Again, K through 6, more focus on exploration and figuring out what each kid loves to learn about. Every child has gifts. Focus on improved reading by 3rd grade. More experiential learning, especially for older kids and high school kids. And teachers feel supported.
Good. Greg Davis.
You're muted.
Now, okay.
There you go.
Okay, well, I wrote something, but now I can't read what I wrote. But anyway, that there would be the school district would be, the school board would be unified in leading a school district and a community drive to educate all children effectively. And that one of the biggest selling points to the district becomes our teachers. Going out in the community and saying what a great place it is to work with Clarke County and how much they feel like they're accomplishing and reaching their professional goals and in practicing their craft and So those are the two that I have.
Good. Great. John Knox. Unmute.
Yeah. Oh, I know. I'm trying to figure out when the space bar works and when it doesn't work. I haven't figured that one out yet.
Right.
Okay, 3 aspirations. We'll start with the students. Most college towns that I'm aware of have a strong public school system with high performing students, and I think we can do that too. And I think the excuses that might be made for that are irrelevant. And so, from an attitude of equity, we have a college town with a lot of educators in this town, and it should be a possibility. We should be able to do that and really have a very strong district in terms of student performance, all students.
Good.
Next, schools. I would dream of having stable principals who are, so we don't have principal churn like we have had at some of our schools. And I think that would lead to the subpart on that is teacher retention. So we would have good, strong principals who then attract and retain excellent teachers. And I think we have that sometimes, but not all the time. And then with the district, I keep remembering the study that was done when we were looking for a superintendent. And it was interesting that this, in terms of what was going on in the district on all sorts of different questions, you had general agreement by different groups, whether they were students that were surveyed, parents, uh, other stakeholders, you name it. But there was one outlier, and it was actually administration. So it was school administration, which I think partly included central office. And so there seemed to be a disconnect. And I've said this before at board meetings, there seemed to be a disconnect from, say, the higher ups in our district and everybody else in terms of perspective. And so I think what I would dream of is that our district leadership would be perhaps better connected, on the same page as everybody else in the Athens Clarke County community. That's one that still puzzles me. I don't understand everything about it, but I believe the data. There were too many questions that were asked where everybody was on one side and administration was on the other. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Chris Greiner.
Yes, I think Dexter said it well, but I will try to come up. I think having the consistency in the superintendent position, in that same vein, working well with the board in that position. And then I think you always got to, of course, focus on our students. I mean, that's what we do this for every day. So I think it's that, meeting the community needs, being the students and the high achieving piece as well. And then I think, as CFO, of course, I'm going to say this, I think from a, not only thinking like 1 year ahead, like, most districts do. And honestly, we never would have thought we'd been in the pandemic we're in now. But I think you got to look 2 to 3 years ahead with a financial forecast and try to maintain that conservative approach, but also provide the resources that are needed every day. So I think it's not necessarily just looking at that 1 year. So I think it's an aspiration for the district to do more 2 to 3 year financial planning.
Great. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Worthy. You're muted, sir. We can't hear you. There you
Can
go.
you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Okay, I said first and foremost, clear up this accrediting issue, because if we don't clear that up, we aren't going anywhere. The next thing, support our staff and allow them to do their job. The next thing, board members learn their role and responsibilities and follow those roles and the responsibilities. And I think I had another one now. Oh yeah, continue the equity approach.
Great. Thank you. Dr. Thomas.
Yes, ma'am. Let me go to my doc. Disparity in achievement is eliminated or at least significantly reduced. There's a collaborative relationship between the school board, the superintendent, school level leadership, and LSGTs. The community has regained trust in CCSD and its leadership. You said 3, but I have one more, and there's a reduction in discipline due to greater cultural understanding and stronger relationships.
Great. Fantastic, thank you. Brandon.
All right, so I put 100% kindergarten readiness. So really ensuring that our early learning programs have an impact on having students ready for school. I think a given is 100% graduation, but I move a little further in saying that all of those students that graduate from CCSD are either college ready or career ready through their completion of pathways. I also put that all schools have a STAR climate rating or 4 or higher, indicating that students, staff, and parents feel connected to their school. And then I duplicated what Dr. Yeager said about 100% of our students reading on level by 3rd grade.
Great. Awesome. Ms. Davis.
Okay, I think I'm somewhat similar. So I have 3, and for the students, my vision in 5 years is that every child is thriving and aware of who they are and what they're aspiring to, and that they are being tracked to move toward that objective, right? And then, and for the community and for all of CCSD is that with an equity lens, the community loves CCSD and trusts us to do the work. And my 3rd aspiration is to know the cost to educate a child in our district. And I'm not talking about taking the budget and dividing it by the number of children. I don't want that number. I want to know, what does it cost to actually give every individual child what they need to be prepared for college and career.
Great.
That's mine.
Thank you. Lynn Duke.
I picked that, actually I've wrote it down because I'm having all kinds of technology issues today. Sorry, I keep coming in and out. I picked that we have created a community that trusts each other, that there's trust among us and trust among our stakeholders, that I feel like is at the root of our issues right now, that we just don't have a lot of trust in this community. And that includes all of us. And that also 5 years down the road, equity doesn't have to be talked about as much, because it just is what we do. You know, it's ingrained and it's pervasive, and it's no longer, can y'all hear me?
Yes.
I just got to notice that my internet was out again. So that it's not this add-on, it's just what we do. We look at everything through the equity lens, and we are willing to make changes when it's not right for kids, and we don't hang on to things just because it's what we love.
Great. Kara Dykman.
I didn't know I was going to be next. Okay, so
it's a surprise to everybody,
yeah,
right?
I'm watching it go by, but so all of mine, when I first start thinking about this, I always think about what kind of students or what I want students to get out of their experience with school. And so specifically what I would love for them to come out of CCSD with. And so my aspiration for students is that they are engaged in learning and always have the desire to learn. And that's something that we instill in them. I'm less interested in their test scores and more interested in that they want to continue learning, that they enjoy being in school and the environment in school and have a reason why they come to school. And I think that the test scores can follow from that. I also want them to be able to be critical thinkers and digest information in a way that is useful and be able to tell when things are accurate and not accurate, and just have the skills to be able to do that and not just regurgitate. And then the last one is that I want all the students to be healthy, both physically and mentally. And hopefully all of those things would then ultimately lead to them having good, student achievement or better performance.
Awesome. Thank you. Dawn Myers.
Hi, Lee.
Hi, how are you?
Great. My three aspirations are that the CCSD has a leadership team and a board who are able to work together and be honest with and trust one another, which I believe would lead to the ability to make some bold decisions around increasing equitable opportunities for students. The second one is district leaders would encourage and embrace true shared governance and input through LSGTs, teacher advisory board, community equity ally, academy, et cetera, instead of seeing those groups as a threat to decision making. And finally, like Kara, an increased focus on meeting the health, mental health, and SEL needs of students and staff.
Great. Students and staff. Okay. Lakeisha Gant. Oh man, y'all moved. Oh. Okay, go ahead. I see who moved.
Okay, I have for my aspirations, one, that every child will be able to read. They will have an increased level of self-esteem and identity. The second one is that more robust partnerships will exist between local groups, including not just nonprofit organizations, but partnerships between businesses as well, so that our goods and services, a significant portion of those are fed into our community. Third, I have that there will be just ongoing and integrated leadership development among teachers as well as building administrators. And then lastly, and I think this may be even, maybe most important, but that we have a strong board that understands ourselves as well as our roles. Because I don't believe that, I'm learning that the potential of the school district is directly tied to the functioning of the board.
Good. Okay, now I'm looking to see who's moved around. Lisa Palmer.
Lee, I think Lawrence, myself, I think I may be the last one. I don't believe
Okay.
Lisa participated in it.
No, I'm not participating.
Okay. So Lawrence, are you going to add in?
Yeah, I'll add in. I won't read the intro to my letter, and I'm sorry my video won't pop on for some reason. There I am. So in my letter, I put that we've reached a space where the inequities in our district have been minimized and all students have an opportunity to succeed. They're all graduating college and career ready. Our parent and staff satisfaction is up. We're fielding calls left and right as people look to relocate to Athens and the Clarke County School District because we have amazing schools. And then lastly, I put that everyone feels heard and our school system has processes by which to listen to our community and act with fervor to make sure that we do what is best for our students and our families. But the community also understands that some things take time and they trust that we're going to do what's best for children because we have competitive and innovative programs in our schools that are teaching our students the skills to be best, not just in Georgia, but around the world.
Did you cheat and write that ahead of time?
No, I literally I told Fenwick I should have wrote beforehand. But...
These are awesome aspirations. I want to give a quick second to say, we heard a lot of commonalities: board function, with staff in the district, teacher retention, principal retention, but so much more focus on kids, on making sure our kids can read, that our kids are learning, that they love school. You know, I mean, I think that's such a great aspiration for every kid in the community to love going to school. And so this kind of aspirational exercise, well, before I say that, I'll say this. Was anything missing? Did anybody have a thought that we didn't capture? John Knox, did I see you raise your hand?
It was kind of captured, but I wanted to put a little more sharpness to it about teachers. What I would really dream of is that we would be a mecca for teachers to come and stay. Now that I'm on my 4th year on the board, I am astonished at the number of educators, K through 12 educators we have that live in Clarke County, but actually work in other counties and are ex-employees of CCSD. I think a real sign of turning that around would be when you have just the opposite, where you have the educators in Clarke County working for CCSD, and we draw people in and retain them from other places. And I think that directly relates to the students, because if we're doing that, I think then we have a more stable teacher workforce, and I think that improves student achievement. And at the same time, we have to, it's not just that we keep people that have left or bring back people that have left, but also that we expand the diversity of our teacher corps. That's a national problem, but it's definitely a problem here. So we can try out of the box approaches to try to do that. And I think I've heard some things about charter school districts that would make that easier to do. So teachers, but also students.
Great. Any others that maybe got missed that we need to add in?
I know we talked about the teachers, but when I talk about the district, I'm talking about everyone in the district. So the teachers, the cafeteria workers, everybody on our payroll, again, trusting us to make the best decisions and being a part of that decision making and building this environment. And I keep hearing I worry about turnover, but I want us to be a place that if people come, we have to put them out because we've exhausted all of their creativity and we need that fresh blood in here to keep this thing moving. So yeah, I want us to be that system that allows people to come in with no experience and be wildly successful at executing a program that serves our kids and our community, so that when they leave, we know that there's a roadmap for the next person to come in if they leave. So yeah.
Good, great, thank you. Yes, Greg Davis.
Yeah, there's something that, and hopefully Lawrence and I have talked about it in terms of when we meet with the county commission again. But I would like a community where every single young person is engaged, if they care to be, but have an engagement after school, weekends, during the summer, that they have something that really excites them, that is, kind of a program. I don't care if it's midnight basketball or on the weekend or whatever it is, academic, recreational, music, art. But I would like to see every single child in Clarke County have that opportunity to be engaged in programming outside of school, because there's so much out there that our kids are not experiencing in terms of I think Lakeisha talked about developing potential of who you are. I think that would be a good means to an end way of doing it. Thank you.
Good, thank you. I'm writing furiously, sorry. Okay, so I think I have 8 minutes until we're done. This aspirational thinking, what it kind of does is forms kind of the basis of goals. I mean, to make sure that this stuff is in your goals for what you so that's why it's important to capture this, but it's also important that review process of where you've been also affects your goals and what you aspire to be. And so it's important to think through that. And some of it feels a little bit like, beating a dead horse or kind of rehashing things that don't need to be rehashed, or maybe we've done over and over. But I think it's important. I think it's important to have that conversation, to see where you've been, to think about where you are now, and then where you want to go. And so what we're going to do with this, and when I say we, I mean me, is I'm going to kind of organize it a little bit and find some themes. I think we've talked about a lot. We've talked about some of the themes that we saw in here. And then I want y'all, we're going to send those back out to y'all. I think Lawrence will put together kind of a little survey for you to prioritize them. I'm a big believer that if everything's a priority, then nothing is a priority, that you have to focus. You can't accomplish everything in 2 years, and this is a 2-year plan. And so that prioritization will help you focus. And that focus, while it may be on 3 things, it may be on 5 things, it will move you forward, and it will move you forward not just on those aspirational goals, not just on those goals that you have in that priority list, but also towards achieving others. And so you'll get this back, and Lawrence and I will talk about timing on when that'll get returned to you, for you to just kind of do that quick vote and tell me what your priorities are. And let's start making sure if you don't have those goals right now in your plan, let's make sure we have them. If they're somehow in there in a way that fits, let's make sure they're in the right place. So I hope that makes sense to everybody on how what we did today is going to move us forward in this process. I appreciate your participation. I know it's a challenge as a facilitator to just look at you on the screen. And I know it's a challenge as a participant just to look at a screen. So I appreciate it. I appreciate your patience with our technological challenges today as well. Sometimes we just have to shift things on the fly, and that's what we'll do. So are there any questions before I turn it back to Lawrence? Thank y'all. I appreciate it. Lawrence, I'm gonna give it back to you.
Thank you, Lee. I just want to thank you, Lee, again for this time. I know you're going to be with us for a while because you're helping us through this process. But I really appreciated the activities today, and hope everyone did. I know, it's really hard sometimes to really look back, especially when you start talking about those low points, right? You really start to look at, wow, these are what places that I really wish we had done something different, or if I had known it, like hindsight, right? You look back and think, man, if we could have done this differently, what could that impact have been? But I think we should all be appreciative of that, because that, as someone said earlier, is what we learn from, right? They don't, again, babies, when they fall, we don't say that's a mistake, never walk again, but they get back up and they keep trying. And so as we continue to learn through this together, I think it's important for us as a school system, the same way we teach our students to always get back up, always keep pushing and striving. We're doing the same thing as leaders in the school system. And so what will happen is, as Lee mentioned, we'll send out the information to you all to rank. What do you think are the top priorities? I do want to make sure everyone knows we are also getting a survey getting ready to get posted to our website for our surrounding community to respond to talk about what are their top priorities for us as the Clarke County School District. And so we will be getting that message out specifically to our LSGTs, TAB and PAB, and our different groups, as well as the parents and our teachers, our principals, our custodian staff. And so we just want to make sure that everyone in the school system, as well as our surrounding community, including our businesses, have a voice. If the next 2 years, what would you like to see out of the Clarke County School District? And as you all know, we're not going to be able to tackle everything, but that would really help us as we drive our strategic plan update and ensure that we're making sure we're meeting the needs of our community. So again, I just want to say thank you to Lee. I know this was even on my side, I was a little disappointed all the cool gadgets I was playing with this past week did not work. For those folks who want to finish your letter, if that is a thing, I know I'm one of those type A people. Like if I didn't get to finish an activity, I want to knock it out. If you want to finish it in the Google Drive, me and Lee will go over that so we can have access to those letters and make sure we can pull your themes out, and you can get your envision of our district on paper. So feel free to go back in and knock that out. It doesn't have to be really long, but I'd love to see what everyone's vision here is for the Clarke County School District. I do want to make sure Dr. Thomas has a chance as well to speak. And Ms. Davis, you also look like you're ready to say something as well.
So we're going to close with Dr. Thomas. I just have a question. Why a 2-year plan? That concerns me, because does it change that rapidly? And so why not a 5-year plan?
I can speak to that, Ms. Davis. We're starting with a 2-year plan, just recognizing and anticipating that there will be new leadership in the next year or so, and wanted to allow an opportunity for the new superintendent, because it's always when there's someone new, or whether it's a superintendent, a head coach, whomever, they come in and they have their own plan. So our goal was to modify the plan we have and have it more focused and something more streamlined that we can actually implement and monitor. But we didn't want to just do a year, because you're exactly right. You do need something longer. But our hope is that in the next year to year and a half, there will be a permanent superintendent in place. And I didn't want us to go and do the work of creating a 5-year plan, knowing that someone would probably come in and make changes to that, because it just seems to kind of be how leadership works. So that was our rationale. We talked back and forth about that. We agree you need something longer, but recognizing the tentative positions of leadership right now, we wanted to respect that, and thought that maybe if someone new came in after a year, they would take a year to at least learn the system, learn the work that we're doing, and we could at least get good 2 years in that plan before a change was made. So that was the rationale.
Thank you. I just don't want us to aim too low.
I agree. And I hope that we will, and I'm not hoping, I know we will put metrics in place that will allow us to build and progress, and with the expectation that whomever takes the rounds after this can continue that work. But yes, you're right. We were thinking the exact same way.
Dr. Thomas?
Yes, sir.
I would just like to take this opportunity to just say thanks to you, Mr. Lawrence Harris, your entire cabinet, and all of the facilitators. I can't recall sitting in one place in my home this long and didn't get bored. It was a beautiful day, and I think I know I benefited from it, and hopefully others did too. But thanks to all of you all.
Well, Mr. Word, they kind of took my words. I was going to say I've taken like 3 pages of notes. I've starred, I've underlined, I've highlighted. I think we hit some dark places today, but that's where growth happens, and you can't grow without acknowledging some of the hurt, the pain, the missteps, the things that we need to do differently. And we won't stay there. We can look back at what we've learned from, and then make a commitment collectively to move forward for the sake of achievement of all of our students. And so you're right, today has been good. Even the charter, having been one of the first charter in the district. I thought I knew a lot about charters, but I still had several takeaways from today. I think there's some things we can do almost immediately to strengthen our work with our LSGTs. I love the idea of having cluster work or cluster groups that come and represent from an advisory lens. So I took a lot from that. And Lee, I've taken a lot from what you said, just the aspirations and the hopes, and hearing how we all transitioned from kind of some therapy. I felt like parts of this was therapeutic. There were some things people needed to say and get out, but then we were able to quickly transition to, but now what? And that's where, however long I'm in this interim role, I want us to focus on our students' academic achievement, their social emotional needs, and the supports that our students and family and communities need to be successful. And as Mr. Gaskins said, and Mr. Harris, of course, has lived by, we need our kids not to just graduate, but we need them to be college or career ready. Graduation is not enough. And Mr. Gaskins says, and I get frustrated when he says it, but we control graduation at some level. We can control who graduates. We can manage, those grades and that kinds of thing. But what we have to work towards is ensuring that our students have, when they leave our domain, successful in the workplace or in post-secondary education. And I want us to stay committed as a collective team in that work. So thank you, Lee, for getting us back to that place. We look forward to work with you. We will begin as a cabinet and executive team tomorrow, looking at the goals that we have in place and seeing how we can refine those so it can truly be something that we make. And lastly, I think it was Dr. Knox that mentioned having the strategic plan up all the time. And that's a lot, but it's not too much to have your vision or mission up. And that's something we've talked about, having that on every agenda, in every meeting we go to, even in our board meetings, our cabinet meetings, our leadership team meetings. What is our vision and mission? So when we're having discussions and making decisions, that's always there as a visual reminder of what our work is about. So we're going to make some of those shifts as well. And we just look forward to moving forward with this work. So thank you all. And you're right, I've sat in the spot for a really long time, but it's been very beneficial and energizing. So we appreciate all of your time and you all being here with us today. Thank you, Mr. Harris and Mr. Boyer, for working with our facilitators, and let the work continue.
Thank you, Dr. Thomas.
Let's do it. We'll be better together, y'all, better together. So thank you.
Thank you.
Everyone.